Hey guys, what's going on? Paul here, and welcome back to another Cardano live stream, joined by three very familiar Cardano content creators, I'd say, for most watching here. It's great to have the guys on tonight. I have Josh, Pete, and Farid, so looking forward to getting into it. Anyone tuning in, please do share the video out, get involved in the comments down below. Well, this one, we've picked a few topics that we're going to go through, but what we want is more a general discussion around different things ongoing in Cardano. If there's questions from anyone out there or topics they want to drive us towards and get opinions and get a bit of discussion going on, please do so. The more people that get involved, the better I think it is for everyone. As well, don't forget to like and subscribe if you are new. Guys, very welcome on the channel. Thanks for taking the time to come on crazy time schedule to line this all up. We have 9 p.m. for me. It's the middle of the day for Josh and Farid and Pete. It's a little bit early for you at 6 a.m. But let's kick it off with Josh who's beside me. Josh, just who you are, just in case there's anyone watching that isn't familiar.
Yeah. My name is Josh. I am the content creator over on a YouTube channel called Late Game Crypto. It is a Cardano-based YouTube channel. I talk about fundamentals, I talk about philosophy, and I don't talk about price.
Great. Farid, you're down below Josh there.
Awesome. Welcome, everybody. My name is Farid, run the Dapp Central YouTube channel. Came into the space about a year ago, covering all of the latest news, updates, and tutorials going on in Cardano, mainly focusing on DeFi. I'd love to branch out into the NFT space, but Paul and I have actually had a couple of streams together, so I won't take up too much time. Glad to be here. Thanks again for the opportunity, Paul.
No worries. Great to have you on again. And Pete?
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. It's I can't remember last time when it was now, but yeah, yeah, a little bit. I cover everything in the Cardano space. Started off as an SBO and realized that you need a little bit more reach to gather delegation. So hence started the YouTube channel and been creating content for almost 2.5 years or so, almost 3 years coming up to that. It's been a wild journey. Cover everything from DeFi, NFTs, and anything that excites me. So yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah, great. And anyone watching, the links for all of the guys' channels should be in the description. I think I put them in already, and if not, I will after, but I think they are there. So look, one of the biggest, hottest topics in Cardano right now is Project Catalyst. And the Fund10 results came out 2-3 days ago at this point, and probably not exactly what everybody wanted to see. There was a big focus, I think, going into this one on downvote any projects that you don't think deserve funding. And I think for me, from what I've seen, the big catalyst for this was Turbo, Daedalus Turbo. A lot of people weren't happy with the funding they got in the previous round. I don't think they definitely didn't get all of the funding claimed, or I don't know if they got any of it actually, but it made people more aware of the importance of looking into what projects are getting funded. So there was a lot of downvoting in this one, and it's kind of gone the opposite way. There's a lot of really good projects out there, good proposals, I think, didn't get funded, where they got support from their own communities, but it looks like potentially a few whale accounts were able to downvote them to, I suppose, cancel out the votes of all of the community that might have been supporting them. But maybe we'll go around the table, get your opinions on this Project Catalyst voting rounds, good, bad, and then maybe some ideas on different potential ways it could go into the future, because there's lots of, I think it's good, there's lots of different discussions around it. There's no one obvious way that it can work going forward, but definitely something needs to be changed. Let's go the opposite way this time. Pete, do you want to kick us off? I know you put a video out already on it, so you maybe give the summary of it here too.
Yeah, so I completely agree that Daedalus Turbo was probably the catalyst to the extreme downvoting for everything else here. Like, we saw a lot of people tweeting about various proposals, like possible scam proposals, and just highlighting them so everyone knew that they did exist this round as well. And that was one of the really good contributions that people were talking about in the submission process for maybe Fund 11 or and so forth. So there's a couple of ideas just around the submission process. One of them was maybe a deposit to put forward. So you're putting some cash down the line so that before you put anything on, it will stop those spam ones, hopefully. But then there's an argument how much ADA is enough for a deposit. Are you excluding people that don't have any ADA at the moment? So there's a little bit of balance there to have a look at. But then there's also the idea of filtering all those proposals before they actually get to the submission process as well, the voting process, sorry. So that way we're not going through 1,400 and whatever it was proposals and looking at all these scams and trying to work it out. So, if people could actually get all the proposals filtered before they get to that voting phase, it'll be a lot easier for anyone that's voting and won't need as much of a down voting process to go through and have the kind of consequences and results that we have at the moment. But Catalyst is a growing organic process. We're learning from it. Hopefully people aren't too disheartened by the results and what has happened and continue with it. Me at the moment, I'll probably sit out Catalyst for a little while until things change and shake up a little bit. Of course, I'll still be watching and voting and whatnot, but I wouldn't put a proposal in. It's just a little bit too much of a time sink, I think.
Yeah, very fair. And good point on. I hope developers looking at this don't get disheartened that and decide not to build or not to put in funding proposals. It is an evolving process. We do need change on it. And I think even certain categories focused on developers, I know there is some of them, but in different ways that maybe downvotes don't count. And if there was a filtering process, I know you risk having a bit of centralization in what is a decentralized funding method, but maybe it's needed in certain cases for vital development funds, because sometimes a lot of people voting mightn't understand the importance of some of the tooling that some of the developers are looking to build, and it doesn't sound as fancy as some of the other projects that might get the funding up front, but it's the developers that are working in the background that they're needed for a lot of the other dApps to build on. And Farid, do you want to take up your thoughts on Catalyst?
Yeah, sure. I'm more than happy to. Now, granted, I don't think that I've had much experience as everybody else here on the panel with respect to Catalyst rounds, but this last one was one that I did personally participate in. And one thing that I noticed, just like everybody else, was the amount of downvotes. Another thing that I also noticed was some of the proposals that were actually funded were either being worked on by other teams outside of Catalyst, or potentially were working on things that were like already implemented. And so I think maybe some sort of vetting when, approving things, just to make sure that they're not being worked on already, or that there's not already somebody else prioritizing that, would be really good. And then something else that really came up to my mind yesterday as I was speaking with Josh and Trim yesterday was potentially splitting out the categories, right? So I think there's some teams that are, well known within the space, which obviously they get a lot of funding as a part of Project Catalyst. But for somebody, for example, like myself or Pete or Josh, who put in these proposals that aren't necessarily asking for these bigger budgets, it would be nice for us to also have a fair shot, right? I think that a lot of the funding goes to a lot of the bigger teams, not necessarily individual builders. And so I would like to potentially see some sort of highlight for that, maybe putting aside a small pool out of like the total pool that goes to, individual or non-team specific, proposals, which I think would really kind of help with Project Catalyst. Obviously, Catalyst is to get a lot of new ideas and, involve a lot more of the community into building. But it seems like the funds are going to, I don't want to say the same teams over and over, but it seems like they're going to establish projects already. So hopefully those projects, have other ways to gain revenue and they're not solely relying on Catalyst. But those are my initial thoughts. And something that I also brought up yesterday on my live stream was just potentially, I don't want to say barring people out, but keeping track of people that have won in prior rounds and just being aware that they already have funding from previous rounds, right? So maybe being a little bit less inclined to give them a second round of funding without giving somebody else a look or shot first. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, just bringing this up, some good points there. And just to bring this up for some of the points you hit on, look, it highlights it here. of there's a few teams getting a lot of the funding or a big percentage of what's out there. And look, the DC Spark M Labs have contributed a lot to Cardano development. I don't think we'd be as far along as we are without projects like this building. But sometimes it does mean that there are other builders out there that might get disheartened or might not continue to build because there's no easy way to get funding, especially in a bear market. You see Catalyst team. This is the first time I think they've taken funds out of it, is it? I know they had their own category this time. Spectrum Labs, to be fair, it's a decent chunk of ADA they're getting, but they have open sourced everything they've done so far, which is great to see. I don't think they will be looking for that much funds every round. SundaeSwap, I know they're looking at Aiken and Hydra and a few other bits. NM or NFT Maker, NMKR is the name now. Not actually familiar with this one. Zengate, TX Pipe do a lot on the development side. I don't know how much funding they've got before, but definitely a team that puts a lot of work into helping others build on Cardano. And Josh, what's your thoughts on the round just gone by?
So unlike a lot of people, I think, in the community, I'm actually glad that things went down the way that they did, because a lot of people in the community are raising up arms and like, Catalyst is broken. And I have the complete opposite approach. Catalyst is not broken. It hasn't been built yet. It's still very much in the experimental phase. Just like when you're in a testing process, the point is to go in and break some things and see what ways doesn't work. What ways do work. This is the process. This is what it's supposed to look like. What I think was fascinating about this round is that the exploit, I guess you could call it, the like big thing that went wrong isn't anything new to any previous Catalyst rounds. It was the ability for whale wallets to mass downvote with unlimited power to the full force of their capability. I think that there's some relatively simple solutions to that, but that was the main problem that went wrong in this particular round. I think that round 9, the worst voted proposal had something like a negative 179 million ADA result. And then Fund10 came out with the worst one was a negative 279 million ADA negative vote, which is like, it's a big difference. So we're seeing some bigger numbers, some more interesting extremes come out of Project Catalyst and Fund9. And I think that's the big thing that we need to be paying attention to and figure out a good way to fix that, because that would have changed a whole world of how this voting round turned out.
Yeah, I think the downvoting is probably the biggest one that people would like to see some work done on, and it's hard to know what the right approach is. Well, from my opinion anyway, it's like, do you take the downvotes and do you allow them to? You can still upvote with your ADA on as many projects as you want, but you can only downvote with your ADA once. So if I downvote, say I have 100,000 ADA, I can downvote 20K against one project, 20K against another one, but that I can't keep doing 100K against every project. So if I have a whale that's supporting a fund or a proposal that I've put in, and they upvote mine and downvote everything else, that's kind of where I think we need to look at it. And maybe that they can only use every ADA they have, they can only use that once as a downvote, but they can upvote as many positive ones. And I think right now that might be a simple enough addition to it. See how it works. There's probably other ones that can be worked on. And I've seen there was one comment here about DREPs. So I don't know where we are with DREPs yet. One thought I had yesterday was along the lines of DREPs and having one category within Catalyst voting where it's just the DREPs that vote on it. Now, it would be controversial because it's centralized around whoever the DREPs are, but maybe in Fund 11, as well as voting on different projects, people vote for certain DREPs that then when you get to Fund 12, you could have one category where them voted in DREPs, they get to vote in one category. And I think something specifically around development. So if you have technical people that get in, that can look through the proposals and see which ones they think deserve the funding for it. But you would have to be doxed to a degree or known to be actually voted in as a DREP. People could volunteer themselves to get voted in, probably have to get some bit of pay as well, some ADA for doing it, for their time to make sure that they do it and do put in the proper time. Something like that maybe could work as well. But what's your thoughts on downvoting one, that you can only use your ADA once, or even the DREP side of things?
So what you explained first is exactly how I would do it. Is I would make it so that there's sort of that downvote scaling solution to where every ADA, the full weight of your ADA isn't applied to every vote that you downvote. It would be spread across every proposal that you downvote. So if you've got 10 million ADA and you apply that to one proposal, then that proposal is going to get negative 10 million ADA. But if you go and downvote 800 proposals, you're only going to have 12,500 negative votes go towards that proposal. So I think it pretty effectively does mitigate the and I think solve the issue that we saw in this round, because every time you implement that downvote button, it dilutes your power. And that's the big problem with it. So yeah, that's exactly how I would do it.
I want to pose a quick question to the panel. What about applying a very similar structure with upvotes?
I'm not opposed to it. I mean, like, I think that the way that it works right now with upvotes, it works. I think that it is a little annoying that like you're limited to 10 upvotes per round, because there's more than 10 proposals that I would like to support, that I'm interested in, that I'd like to see through. Yeah, it could work both ways. I'm not opposed to it. I think that the approval threshold would need to be adjusted if both of these things are implemented in that way. But yeah, I would be on board.
Cool. Yeah. One other thing that I also saw there as Paul was putting up some of those comments was a question about Minswap using their ADA, right, on the protocol as a part of voting. And for me, I'm not sure about what you guys think, but I think it's an everybody does it or like nobody does it, right? So I think next rounds we'll probably see a lot more people doing that. I know that people were taking out bonds and using that as voting power. And so I think just more people taking advantage of these different strategies to get their voices heard. But it'll be interesting to see if other dexes follow suit next go around, with Wing Rider, Sunday Swap, Muesli Swap, potentially the Genius Seal dex, to see if they also follow suit with that. But I'm interested to hear what you guys have to think or have to say about that.
I think that was a good idea. It's essentially a look into what DREPs could be like. Because they went through their own process of governance. So they had everything on the forums. Their community voted for various proposals that were put up, and showed what they wanted to vote for. And I think that was a really good filtering process, because people actually had to go through and read through the proposals early on in that process, so that Minswap could then allocate the votes to the final voting round. So personally, I think that was a really good way of doing it. And I do think more projects will start doing that in the future as well. So they're not just using their ADA to vote for their own proposals, but actually taking in the community and using their ADA, which is on their decks, to go to the projects that they want to be voted on. So I think that's a really good approach, and I'd love to see that in the future too. In terms of the upvoting and working similar to how we're talking about now, I think it's a good idea. If it's good for downs, then it's probably good for upvoting as well. The whole tiered voting, point allocation, or even just enabling quadratic voting within the ecosystem would be a nice approach. Of course, we don't know how this is all going to work out, and that there are some teams that are looking at modeling around this. So I know Darlington from Lido Nation is playing around with that data from Fund10 and playing with how different voting models could possibly skew the outcome or change it for the better. So this is the time to experiment for this. And what you were saying a little bit earlier about the different sub challenges or different groups of challenges, this is the time to do it as well. So Danny did mention that that they're going through the different challenges at the moment, or will be. So if you think there's some sub challenges that need to be created, now is the time to do it.
Yeah, no, I would love to see, again, some of these smaller contributors in this space getting funding. And Josh mentioned this yesterday that, this has been one of the stiffest rounds in terms of competition. And I was highly surprised at some of the projects that did not get funding that were legitimate projects, right? And so I think Genius Shield was one of them. They had some pretty big proposals that I think would have really helped out the community. We also touched on C3 as well, which was bringing Oracle feats that didn't go through. And so my thing is, like, if they're not getting their proposals passed through, like, there's probably very little chance that somebody who isn't a team is also going to get their proposal passed through. So just my 2 cents there, but I appreciate your insight in you agreeing with some of my points there earlier, Pete.
Yeah, I think for me as well, what Minswap done, I think was very fair, and that they put it back. They had their own mini governance for themselves, where people who were a part of it were able to vote on who they thought should be brought in, and they went through it. It wasn't just Minswap decided we're going to use the ADA to vote for just our own proposals so that they could pass. They went through and they picked out lots of good ones within the community, and they focused a lot on builders and developers in the community are the ones that they were voting for as well, which I think was a good process to have. It's probably definitely going to be the first of many protocols that actually come out and do it. And one thing will be interesting to see, and maybe Darlington will be one to maybe look at it, is have any other protocols actually voted with their ADA and not made it transparent to the community? So I don't know of any, but if anyone was to come out and do that, I think that would be the start of the downfall of whatever protocol that will be. Because if a protocol is going to do it, I think it's fine as long as they come out, they're transparent with the community. The community has a chance to pull their ADA out if they don't want the protocol using their ADA for the vote. But it's like anything. It's the protocols that, as we get more and more into DeFi and more dApps launching, the protocols are going to have a bigger say in what happens on Cardano, because they're going to be controlling a lot more of the ADA for the likes of voting or for the likes of delegation to whatever stake pools they want and different things like that. So popular protocols are having a bigger say as we go forward. And there was one other point here that I'd started was Maxwell I mentioned about changing it that wallets that have the most active or non-basic transactions should have the voting power, not by quantity of ADA, quantity of active ADA, put the power in participants, not whales. And I'll give my opinion on, and then I'll go around the table again. I think this is another one that's hotly contested every time, because in a delegated proof of stake network, the idea is that the token is your vote. So that is you voting for what happens on the protocol. And generally the people who hold the most tokens, and this is anything, not just Cardano, but for ADA, the people who hold the most ADA are the most financially incentivized people to do what's good for the protocol. Catalyst, there's probably some gray areas in that they can partner up with people putting in proposals, but that's more so for the Catalyst voting system or governance, the way it works, more so for that to be sorted out rather than trying to change a 1-for-1 vote. The only other one you could do is one person, one vote. But if you're going to do that, you have to have KYC. And we've all seen the fallout and discussions around having KYC on the layer one. And it's not something you want to force people to do to get involved in decentralized governance. But what's your thoughts on it, Josh? Go to you.
Yeah, no, I am pretty aligned. I tend to pretty hardline land on the one ADA, one vote sort of framework. One of the big like innovative, powerful mechanisms of the whole concept of Web3 is the concept of tokenized ownership. And ownership comes with a lot of different things, including decision making. So if you're taking away that portion of it, and the like the stake that you have in the protocol doesn't have any decision power to it, in my eyes that's the same thing as buying a house but letting your neighbors decide what the kitchen remodel is going to look like. I'm not interested in putting my assets in the hands of somebody else's. I should have a proportional say in the amount of the protocol that I owe. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on it. I think that there does need to be some rework in terms of the voting mechanics, but the overall voting framework of one ADA, one vote, I think is an important thing that we have to maintain.
Either of you guys want to pitch in?
Pete, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how the KYC process, the one wallet, one vote process will work. I know a lot of, like you said, Paul, a lot of people are against it. So we'll see if that's even possible with just working out the ideas and concepts behind it. But you know, you have to remember KYC does cost money. So you need to use some sort of KYC provider to do it. That then could become centralized if you're using one KYC provider. So you'd want to use like a variety of them to try to decentralize that process as well. And each one of those wallets that you ID is going to cost, I don't know how much. So it is a little bit of a process and will cost a lot more to get that whole thing done. So keeping it decentralized is probably a nicer model for now, especially in this bear market. But you know, someone might work out something in the future for it. But you know, like we said a little bit earlier, this is an evolving process, and it's good that we're having the discussions and talking about this, so we can actually get this ball rolling and see what we can come up with in the future.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Pete and Josh there about one ADA, one vote. One thing that I don't think has been touched on has just been the inclusion of Cardano native tokens, right? So a lot of people are able to vote if they hold ADA, but what about people that are still invested in particular projects that aren't able to vote because they swapped out their ADA for, you know, a particular governance token for another project that they support? And so I think that also opens up a whole nother conversation, and maybe we go into it later. But for example, I'll just use Genius Yield. You know, let's say I support Genius Yield and I don't have ADA, but I hold the actual Gens tokens, right? I think that that should also have some sort of value because I'm still participating in the Cardano ecosystem. I don't own any ADA per se, right? But that shouldn't, at least in my eyes, exclude me from voting. So I think that is something that we also need to think about, is just people that are not able to vote, not necessarily because they don't hold ADA, but because they might hold some other sort of Cardano native asset. So I'm not sure that every Cardano native asset is worth the same weight. But again, just a thought on my end as to how we can get more inclusivity in the voting process without necessarily having to have people hold ADA. Because people I've seen on Twitter say, hey, just go buy more ADA if you want to have more voting power. But it's not easy for everybody to just keep on, you know, investing or strictly buying ADA without getting out of some existing position that they might not want to have to buy back into at a later point. So just my 2 cents there. And again, I do agree with the one ADA per vote right now, as opposed to the voting points that was mentioned earlier.
There was one more thing I wanted to bring up, and that was the amount of voter participation. And I can't remember the stats off the top of my head, but there's a lot more wallets that hold ADA than the amount of people that actually voted. So we still can drive up a lot of participation within our own community just to start voting in general and, you know, work out what Project Catalyst is. So I really feel like it's a closed circle group of people that know about Catalyst and are voting within the ecosystems, the developers, builders, that people that are really active in it. What about all those other people that are holding ADA but don't know what to do with it? We need to get them on board as well, and show that, you know, this ecosystem's here. Like, use your ADA, use your voting power, even though it's only like 1,000 ADA or whatever it is. Come in, vote, join, and see what the community is doing. we'll see a lot more people voting on various different proposals that are outside of our circles. So that's something really big to push as well. And maybe you've got stats there, Paul.
Yeah, the stat I have here is the total registered ADA voting power was just under 4.5 billion ADA. I thought I seen a stat somewhere with 5 or 6% of ADA had actually voted, but I'm not sure on that. I don't have it here. I'll have to look it up later. But you're right. That is another factor. And I'm going to get on. Actually, we'll go into it now. Is the whole voting process and how, I was going to say how easy it is, but how hard it is to vote on Cardano project or on Project Catalyst, because I have to register my wallet by a certain date. I have to remember a QR code. I then have to go to something like Donation. I find it one of the best ways to look through proposals, or you have idea scale too. And you look at the ones you want, and then you go to the app, and then you're trying to find your proposals on the app that you have linked up using your QR code and your PIN code. And if you forget one of them, then you can't actually use your voting power. And it's just too complex. It's like, if you don't make it really simple for people, they're not going to get involved. If we could have something like Donation, so every wallet is automatically snapshot into it. You don't have to have registered by a certain date. And if you don't need the third-party app to vote, then we don't really need that link. So let people log in using their wallet into the likes of Donation and do your votes through that. So with Donation, you can shortlist or bookmark all of your proposals. And this isn't a pitch for Donation. It's for anyone. I think the APIs are going to be there for anyone to build front ends like this, but this is just the best one I've seen so far. And let people make it so simple for people to vote that they don't have a legitimate reason not to. And I think the UI and UX of it right now is a legitimate reason for some people not to vote, because it is complex. But what's your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, one of the things that I think I will continue to push is that there needs to be an elimination round before the actual voting round takes place that decides who gets funded, because there are way too many proposals for people to try to go through and be aware. And that there's been this stance, I think, that people don't need to read through them all. But when that happens, you get things like what happened with this round, where people are just downvoting proposals automatically, definitely not reading through them. I guarantee you that didn't happen, and actually voting them down based on merit. So I'd really like to see I think that would be a big contributor to the user experience as well. I think that it definitely needs to be less steep for people to participate in it. And if there's an elimination round, then a lot of people will pay attention to some proposals, and the ones that people are paying attention to, the ones that generate a lot of excitement in the community, those ones will go into the next elimination round, and everybody can pay attention to those, because there's not so many others that are drowning it out. So that would be my thought. I agree with you completely. User experience is a must.
Yeah, I tend to agree with what Josh said. I think weeding out the initial competition makes it a little bit easier to focus. And to answer your initial question, Paul, about simplicity, I think the less barriers, obviously, the easier it is for people to participate. And so with what you just mentioned about, Lido being the one-stop shop, obviously they could go ahead and take it upon themselves to do that. But what's interesting is that IOG actually released a tweet. Let's see here. This was on September 7th about something that they call Catalyst Voices, right? Which is supposed to be aiming to do exactly what you just said. It's supposed to be a one-stop hub, right? Where you can not only put in your proposals, you can view everybody's proposals and then actually vote in there as well, right? So that was actually listed as a part of Catalyst funding round number 10 in the system improvements category. So I didn't follow up to see if it voted through, but it would be really cool to see if that did get funded through. And if so, when we could expect to get Catalyst Voices launched to hopefully simplify the entire process. I do want to say on a positive note that the official Project Catalyst website did get a facelift. And so that was really interesting to see, right? And so even just going to review the final stats, I found was super simple, but putting in the proposals through idea scale for me was like, man, I feel like this is such an old school system that, yeah, I do think that it needs to be revamped sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think I used Deerscale for the first time back in 2008. So it is definitely old. I used it for, I can't remember the event now. It will come back. It'll come to me. But yeah, I did hear talk about the actual voting process going onto the Catalyst, Project Catalyst.io website. So there'll be that mobile interface and the web interface for people to be able to vote on. The tricky thing is that the entire Catalyst platform is a application-specific blockchain. So they have their own chain over there to count and tally and do all this voting side of things because it's faster and better user experience for people there. But yeah, that's the biggest focus next, I believe, for any fund in Project Catalyst. It's all about getting that user experience participation up, better interfaces for everyone, better way of vetting all the processes, proposals, so that we can have a better voting experience in general. And hopefully you can't hear my daughter screaming in the background.
Sorry if we woke her at this time. Anyone tuning in, it's still only about 6:30 in the morning for Pete. So we got him out of bed early. Yeah, I agree. And I know when I talked to Danny in the interview about Catalyst, and they talked a lot of stuff is going to be moving to their layer 2 and potentially opportunities for projects to really help them launch, because a lot of times they get funding to develop, but then actually launching and hosting solutions is a whole different story after that. So I think they are looking at improving a lot of stuff going forward. And just before we move off Catalyst, one point, Farid, you mentioned there about allowing people owning projects on Cardano, allowing them to vote. Personally, I'd probably be against it unless I've seen some really good arguments for it, because I think if you go back to the core reason of having ADA as the utility token for Cardano, which is the gas. I know some people don't like calling it gas, but it is there to pay the fees and stuff, and it's there for voting. They're the two. I know we all want to see the price going up, and that's why we hold part of what we hold and all of that. But at its core, they're the two main use cases for it. And it will be a very hard process to decide which projects deserve to have voting power, especially when we look at a cross-chain future where projects will be across multiple chains, and how you decide which ones should have an impact. And then it's an incentive to push the price of the other tokens too, because people are incentivized to hold that token, not just for what the protocol is doing, but also because it gives you the same power as holding ADA. But it'd definitely be a good conversation, or a good one to have at some point. To see Josh just unmuted.
Yeah, I agree with you, Paul, that like there should be an opportunity. I think opportunity cost with giving up your ADA, because that's supposed to be one of the core utility aspects of the token itself. But Farid, I think what you were talking about before really circles back to the concept that we were talking about protocols using the ADA that they have locked into their protocols as governance power. Maybe token holders could have a say in like where that voting power goes, and that's the whole like tokenized ownership thing that a lot of us are here for. Maybe those tokens could represent how that voting power is used, and in that way, it's sort of a derivative governance token for the Cardano protocol. So yeah, I think that it's both and, not either or.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what Minswap, you had to vote with your min, didn't you, this time in their early governance, which is a good step in that direction, in allowing you. I suppose it's an in-between. I hadn't thought of that stage, that it is the in-between, and that holding the other token still allows you to vote on what happens with the ADA in the protocol. So yeah, it would be a good conversation to flesh out more. Most of these things aren't just what the headline says. There's a lot more to them. But any other thoughts from anyone on Catalyst? We're running on time now. Enjoyed going through all of that. Hopefully people got some opinions, overview of what's going on, and I suppose looking into some of the potential ideas. But anything before we take a quick look around the Cardano ecosystem of what's going on?
Boxing match, winner takes all.
Oh yeah, it's easy for you to say
Sorted.
that.
There's actually quite a few boxers in the Cardano community, so I'll get my ass whipped by some of these other people.
Yeah. Well, no experience here. Maybe at some Cardano Summit at some stage we could have some kind of charity events. They had a dunk one at Rare Evo, didn't they, where you could dunk people in the tank? We could do something. You might have to tie one hand behind your back because you have experience or things like that.
Are you guys going to the summit?
It's not 100% decision yet for me, but it's not looking likely in the current market. What about you guys?
I'm not going to be in Dubai. Maybe next year, maybe in the next couple of years. That's one of those ones that I'd like to attend in person. But I will be at NFTLV next weekend.
Yep. Yeah, I'll be at NFTLV, still undecided about the summit. I would love to go out there. I missed the one in person in Los Angeles, and that looked really fun. And so, I think all of us would love to go out there, but right now it's just super far away from any of us. So hopefully they bring it back to the United States next year or something like that.
It's actually nice and close for me, but still can't make it. It's a one single flight. It's direct because all these flights that go to Europe pass through the UAE. So it's actually really easy for me to get over there, but still can't make it this year. Bear market.
Yeah, it's actually easier for me to get there than it would have been to Denver. I would have had to take 2 flights to get to Denver, but from Ireland, I could get one to Dubai. It's not 100% ruled out, but it's looking unlikely when we're getting so close at this point. But you mentioned Lausanne last year. That was my first ever in-person event, and it was a brilliant experience to meet so many people. It's very hard to beat that in-person connection and getting to talk to people, and it was really good. And hopefully we'll be in a better stage next year, and we'll be able to go to lots of events. Rare Evo, I had a lot of FOMO on that one this year, so that's one I'd like to make next year too. So what have we got? Actually, do we go around on Catalyst? Is there anything else before we kick off it?
I'm good.
Yeah, I think we're good. We covered it quite a bit. It's almost 35 minutes of just Catalyst.
Yeah, we planned 20 minutes to 30 minutes, but that's what I was saying to the guys before we started, that when the 4 of us get over and back on topics, it's going to be hard to stick to timelines. But some of the stuff then that was good to see, let me see, can I bring up my screen, was we're starting to see more centralized exchanges accepting Cardano native assets, which is great to see. It means that, where's it gone? That it's easier for people outside of the Cardano ecosystem to get hold of assets on Cardano, because people might be interested in certain projects, but they don't want to come in just yet and start to figure out how you get your Cardano wallet, how you get your ADA, how it all works. And they will in time, but if they can get exposure through getting assets another way first, see my camera's froze, I'll have to fix that in a second. I think that's good. It can bring them in to get more curious and then dive deeper into the Cardano ecosystem. So we see Igon has been listed on Bitpanda, which is a fairly big one for Europe. I don't personally use it myself. I use Kraken for a lot of my fiat on off ramps. I find it very good. But Bitpanda, I know lots of people use it too. And it's great to see. What this means is that Bitpanda can now accept multiple different Cardano native assets. It means that the setup has all been done. They're now set up to take native assets. So it's just like adding ERC20 tokens. In the beginning, a lot of centralized exchanges, as well as the volume not being there for Cardano native assets, they had extra work to do to be able to set up the infrastructure behind the scenes. And the other one that's probably slightly bigger is JPEG Store is going on to OKX, which it's definitely in the top 10 in cryptocurrency exchanges for centralized exchanges. And this has been a long awaited one. I know the token was meant to launch probably a month ago at this point, but there was delays on the listing. But it means that once again, OKX are open now for new Cardano native assets to join. Farid, I know you done a video on this. Do you want to give a quick overview of this one, JPEG Store and OKX?
Yeah, sure thing. So as you mentioned, that's going to be OKX's first Cardano native token listing. To add to that, they will also be listing 48 hours after that on MEXC. And so MEXC, I believe, has already listed a few other Cardano native tokens, including Meld, which was about a couple of months back. But the JPEG sale will not only be done on centralized exchanges, it will also be available on the Minswap DEX, which is arguably the biggest DEX right now in Cardano. So a couple of different ways to enter. One thing that I did find pretty interesting is that they'll be listing on Minswap 2 hours before they list or open up trading on OKX. So I'm going to be watching to see if, a lot of people purchase right away on Minswap and then potentially shift over to OKX. And if there's a price pump, potentially get out over there. So that's just one of the things that I noted there. What was also interesting was that they are going to be exclusive to OKX, I think just to push traffic and some of the eyes and traffic over to OKX for the first 48 hours. So once the token launches on OKX, 48 hours later, it'll be available on MEXC. And then for anybody who's not aware about the extra utility of the JPEG token, it'll give you reduced fees when you're trading on the JPEG marketplace. And they're going to be doing that using a tiered fashion. So depending on how many of the JPEG tokens you hold within your wallet, you're going to receive a certain discount with the trading fees. And then they're also going to give you exclusive whitelist access to any of their upcoming mints that take place directly on the JPEG store. Now, last but not least, it did say that they'll be adding some additional partnerships and integrations of the JPEG token outside of their marketplace. And they'll also be figuring out additional ways to gamify the adoption and integration of the token as well. So that's really it in a nutshell.
Nice. Thanks for that. Saves me having to look through for all the information. So it is interesting that they're doing that. They are listing on Minswap first. I suppose that's going to set the price, because when they go on to a centralized exchange, now I don't know the details of their deal here, but normally you have to put up a certain number of the tokens and you have to give a certain amount for the market makers to do it too. But the price should be set on Minswap then. I don't know if they've given any details on the liquidity they'll be providing. I presume they will set up the liquidity pool, but have they given details on that yet?
They have not. I think they said they'll be allocating about $5 million worth into the centralized exchanges, but I didn't see anything surrounding Minswap or any liquidity incentives coming from Minswap. So I would assume that, as a liquidity provider, you'll earn the Min token and some of the JPEG token, but, that hasn't been confirmed by the actual team yet.
Okay. What else do we have then? So I see someone mentioned Uphold. I hadn't seen on that one that Uphold is participating in the Cardano Summit. So I don't know if they have any plans for native assets. I know finally, actually, can you do it now? They were one of the ones that you couldn't withdraw your ADA from if you held it on Uphold, but did they change that?
Not that I know of yet. I tried it a few months ago. You still had to sell it and then move your sold asset and then rebuy. So it's a bit of a clunky process, but it may have changed.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I used it a few times a long time ago at this stage, not for ADA at the time, but I remember seeing that for ADA you couldn't take it off. I think it was a question I got from someone, so I had to go and figure out what was going on. But hopefully they do allow you to, it's like Revolut. And when they started, then you couldn't take the assets. And actually, they're probably still the same. It's, you can buy the crypto, but you can't actually take it out of Revolut. So who holds custody and that type of thing? It's more an introduction. But hopefully we see more of them moving along. And just on the Cardano Summit, I've seen Exotrade are actually sponsoring, or one of the sponsors as well. I think that one got lots of attention out there, which it's one of them highly anticipated projects. They talked a lot about what they were going to build and what they could bring, especially on the institutional side. From everything I've seen, and I talked to Yarrick before, what they're aiming to build would be brilliant. It basically brings a centralized exchange in a decentralized way. So anything you can do on the centralized exchange, you can do in a decentralized fashion by the the way they're looking to do the smart contracts for custody, so you're not sending it to a centralized exchange and you can have multiple different order types and bots. So there's going to be a lot of eyes on that. The testnet it was meant to be late August, and then it was delayed. I know QA, they said in their in Discord that QA testing is ongoing and they keep getting pushed out by a week to get the final tweaks done. And I think because there's going to be so many eyes on it, then they're looking to have it fairly sharp for coming out. But any thoughts on Axo and the platform or sponsoring or anything like that?
Yeah, they're teasing us. The fact that they're sponsoring the summit, it means that they do have plans to have something up and running. That we know that the testnets are going to be live really soon. But yeah, I love how they're so thorough with their process, ensuring that everything's going to be absolutely perfect. And you are right, Paul. So many people have been watching Axo for a long time. Really long time from when it was Maladex, and I can't remember the name before it now. But yeah, a lot of people have their eyeballs on this one, and it's got to be absolutely perfect, absolutely smooth. Nothing wrong with the testnet, no flaws, no bugs. So a little bit of pressure on the team for sure.
As a developer, Pete, you know that's not possible. It's not possible to have a testnet without bugs.
I know. There was one project that was really impressed with. I can't remember. It might have been Vyfi, but I could not find any bugs when I was going through it. Usually I could find a couple of bugs and mention it to the teams, but I couldn't find any when they launched.
Any thoughts from you guys on Axo and what they're doing?
Yeah, no, I'm extraordinarily excited about what Axo is doing. They've been quiet for a while, and I know they know that has been the case. And it's fun and cheeky, and it'll be really interesting to see what they come out the gate with. I think it's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, I would echo the same sentiment. I think they've built up quite a crowd, right? They've been super quiet, and I think that's only added more to the mystery. And so expectations are high, I'm sure, from everybody. And so I'm really excited to see if, number one, they'll be able to deliver. And then obviously, number two, how quickly they'll be able to shift over from testnet to mainnet. I think just generally speaking, we're kind of seeing like the battle of the dexes, right? We've, I think, seen something similar with wallets where people are kind of, I don't want to say, I feel like the space is somewhat saturated now. Obviously, some of the best are slowly coming about, but I think we're going to see a very similar thing with the dexes as well. Minswap has kind of been ruling the market share for quite a bit of time, but with Genius Yield and Axo, I think they've really got something to look out for. So again, I'll be looking to see how well they perform against some of the existing market leaders.
Yeah, I think that one's definitely going to be interesting with Genius Yield too. There's lots of similarities, I think, in some of their approaches, and they're not standard AMM dexes and what they're trying to do with. I think they both use smart order routing, and what was the other one? They seem to be very close what they're trying to do anyway with the way the funds are used and the way the liquidity is built up, rather than what you have with an AMM dex, which is Minswap or Wing Riders or Sunday. They're all AMM dexes where you put in your two assets into it. But it seems what we will have with Axo anyway is that you can provide one asset and you can set the ranges that you're allowing your liquidity to be used between. And Genius seem to have something like that. And the way I'm looking at it is there's so much being built up about the two projects and talk about how they will change so much for trading. To me, it's nearly like they're going to be an absolutely massive success, or they're just going to fall flat. Because if they aren't streets ahead of what we have already, then people are just going to say, no, well, I'm happy with how things work at the minute and not move over. So it's definitely what I'm looking forward to seeing. Genius Yield is one I don't hear that much about either. Testnet, there's supposed to be some people on testnet now. Is there some, I suppose, the early group, and in the next month or so, hopefully we get access to, or has anyone here got access yet?
I still haven't filled in the form yet, but I will. Yeah, Genius Yield alpha tested needed the NFT, so you had to be one of the OGs to be able to access the particular Discord group. I know, Farid, I saw you message that you're going to pop in there. but I just have not had the chance yet. I decided to have a weekend as opposed to deep diving into the crypto space this weekend.
No, your sanity is much more valuable. Honestly, as a creator, I can definitely attest to that. It's been super busy for me too, but I did get the chance to sign up. It's very, very quick. Just took a couple of minutes. I think it was just like my wallet address, and just a few other questions like email and things like that. So I have not gotten contacted yet. But I think we should hopefully hear something within the next week or two. I did also want to quickly plug in the Spectrum Finance DEX, which has come onto my radar very recently, right? And so I think they're also going to be a really big competitor. And if anybody's not already aware, I think they also have a platform on Ergo. So a lot of cross-chain DEXs coming along. And I just had Pete on my channel to talk about Blue Shift as well, which I think they're also going to be a competitor. So again, the race for the biggest DEXs, I think, is really about to start heating up here in the next couple of months and definitely in the next bull run.
Yeah, it's the biggest thing for Blue Shift was the limitation and the onboarding process to get over to Milkometer. So as soon as that component is built on the Cardano side, we should see a lot more participation from the Cardano ecosystem itself.
Yeah, lots of competition out there, which for us as the end users for it is always a good thing. And we'll get to see who comes out on top then. And good point by Pippo is that they're not, Genius and Axo aren't going to be AMM DEXs. They'll be order book. I think they're not just straight up order book DEXs though either. They will have some form of concentrated liquidity where you can specify what trading range you will allow your assets to be used within. And once we get towards that and we see exactly how it works on testnet, I'm sure all of us here will be putting out lots of content in around it and talking about the differences, because the types of DEXs, they will suit some people and they won't suit others. So that's where they can all fit long term. I think there's going to be one or two DEXs will win out. There was someone asking about Vyfi there and the token. So what's going on with Vyfi from my perspective on it? I think it's like all tokens for DEXs when they come out first. And generally, things can spike up in the beginning. But if you look back on Minswap or Sunday Swap or Wing Riders or anything else, that once the DEX launches and it's out there, there's a lot of the token coming into circulation. I know Vyfi have smaller tokenomics and less coming in, but still there's more coming in for yield farming rewards every day. And that is giving people the token to sell. And there's not a huge incentive to hold the token. With Vyfi, they do have the bar where you can earn some of the trading fees, but it's not enough right now in the bear market for people to hold it. I think once you get to a bull market, if the DEX is still doing well and there's more going through it, there's more incentive for people to hold it and more gets shared with the bar. So that could be okay there. But if you look back through the charts, you'll see a similar pattern with most DEX tokens. And a lot of tokens that have yield farming, they're not ones you want to hold early in the life cycle. I think Vyfi or Indigo was one of the ones that bucked that trend slightly. I know they did have a pullback initially, but then they went on a massive run, which was kind of against the general trend with something that gives out tokens for being a part of the protocol. Or any other thoughts on that line, guys?
I'm pretty aligned with that. In the bear market, in my experience, the corrections that tend to take place are more elongated a lot of the time because there's not a ton of buyers because it's the bear market. And then the capitulation process when it goes back up also takes a while to jump back up because volatility just isn't there. So that would be my assessment with the Vyfi token. They're building, there's impressive stuff happening back there, and I'm really excited about what they're building. But it's the bear market. I expect things to turn around at some point, but I'm holding these things for the late game. So
hence the name, yeah.
Yeah, very fitting. Now, I was going to say, I think you hit it right on the head there, Paul. I think one thing to also keep in mind is that all these DEXs all offer, at least in my eyes, different things, right? So, for example, with Vyfi, they've got the bar that kind of sets them apart. They're now kind of shifting over into their layer 2 LP, right? Which is something that I haven't seen on any other DEXs. You take a look at Minswap, they've got like their LBE. And you take a look at, for example, Muniswap, they've now got a DEX aggregator, and they're now looking to implement options trading as well, right? So it's going to be a matter of these quality of life features, I think, around the DEX, not necessarily just the DEX or the type of DEX it is, but some of the other things that it also brings that, kind of makes it some of like an ecosystem to where you can do more than just swap on that particular platform that will really bring in people and make them stick around for, whatever it is that particular platform offers.
I like the strategies that some of these DEXs deploy for when to actually launch. I know Genius Yield, for example, was ready for quite a long time to launch at some sort of point in some sort of form, but they held off because the market was just terrible. So why would you launch right now, or several months ago when the market's still going down? Are we at the bottom yet? And trying to work out the point to when to actually launch so that you don't have a product that fails after launch is, I think, really, really smart. But when's that bottom? when are we going to see all these crypto markets and outflows stop? It's continuous across the entire board. So people are saying we want a product, we want to see the launch when launched, but when is a good time to launch is a good question as well.
Yeah, and as we have often seen in crypto, the token price doesn't always correlate to what the protocol is actually doing or the advancements that they're making. If you look at the likes of Minswap, their tokenomics, they had a lot flooding into the market in the beginning, and the token price really tanked. Where when you look at TVL of the protocol and the continuous improvements that they're making, they're one of the top out there building on Cardano. So things don't always, and you could look at ADA, the way ADA has dropped just like the rest of the market. We're way, way ahead of where we were in the last bear market. But in bear markets, that doesn't really have an impact. And guys, I see we just crossed the hour. If any of you guys need to drop, I will wrap it up very soon. But if anyone needs to drop, I appreciate you joining in today. So, okay, for another few minutes.
Still good.
Yeah, I'm enjoying the chat.
Yeah, no, it's Sunday. I've got all the time in the world.
And I see David says Blue Shift are going to be on European Town Hall next Thursday. And did I see it's his anniversary today? He had a Cardano cake. I'm thinking of the right tweet there. So happy anniversary, David. Appreciate you taking time out of the day to join in with us. And all right, what else have we got? Because topic-wise, let's see what's in the questions. If anyone has a topic they want us to discuss for the last few minutes, drop it in there, and we'll all give our opinions on it. Let me see what else have I got here.
There's
Yep. Sorry.
That you read my mind. That was the comment I was going to bring up.
And actually, Enoch, I seen you had another question earlier in the thread about all the chat that's going on Twitter on front running on DEXs and what's possible there. And we might try and set up a different stream or video looking at that and look at it both from the technical side. Is it possible? How it's possible? And explain a bit more about it, because it's not a topic we could cover properly here now, I don't think. And there's still some very good threads coming out that I want to improve my own knowledge on it before I start talking about it here. But I definitely will put that down as something to cover. This one here, so lots of hints around that we will see an Aerostat soon from World Mobile. Videos being cut off about to give locations and different balloon emojis and stuff like that. So do we think this is in Africa or in the US, or what's your money on?
I think the US.
Yeah, I'll second that. I think with a lot of the talk that I've been hearing about what World Mobile is going to be focusing on this next year and establishing themselves in the US, I think that's the way it's going to go.
Yeah, I think
I'll go against the panel. So I got to go with one of the countries, because I know it's still a good chance that the US seems to be moving a lot faster, but they were in talks with a lot of different countries in Africa about getting it set up, and there's a lot of red tape there. So just to go against the crowd, I'm going to say Africa, and hopefully I can say I was right the next time we hold one of these.
Yeah.
All right, Paul.
I have to get these small wins.
Right. No, I was going to say, I know that they tried for the longest in Zanzibar. I was thinking Africa as well. But But the reason why I recently shifted to say United States is because I know that they did actually get one off. I believe it was in New Hampshire like 2 or 3 months ago. And that was a pretty big thing where like they took some of the hardware from Zanzibar, brought it to the US, and they had like a little facility where they did an actual test. So I think the US will probably be the easiest, but if it's in Africa, then I think it'll be a big announcement either way it goes. So I'm excited to see where Gregory lands. But yeah, the teasing has been like next level.
Yeah. There was talk of Angola. There was something they put out there today or yesterday around that too, throwing hints that potentially there, but it's not a country I've heard them mention much about before. But just when we're on projects, so people watching the channel here know that I'm a big fan of what World Mobile are doing. And one of the few crypto projects that can really, or are currently really trying to make an impact outside or generating revenue outside of crypto and putting it back in with their buybacks that they do every week now at this point. And I know it's only very small amounts at the minute, but there's not many crypto protocols or projects that actually generate funds outside of crypto and put that back in. So it's only one of the reasons. Like they're trying to do a lot of good things, but it's definitely a project for the long term. But any other projects that you guys follow that maybe I don't follow here as closely that you think deserves more airtime than they get, or that is trying to do things right out there?
I would like to bring one up if nobody else has anything that they want to bring up first.
Go for it.
Cool. So I want to give a huge shout out to the Working Dead NFT project. They've been one that has been silently building, actually delivering on their milestones, and they just got their first alpha release out there. So instructors are now onboarded, people can now begin to purchase courses, etc. And they're one of the few NFT projects that is actually giving back utility that is somewhat tangible, right? In that particular sense, it's not just, hey, here's my PFP, and price is going to go up. They're really putting together a learn to earn platform that I think should be what we should start to kind of have as the standard when it comes to NFT projects, right? Utility that is very understandable, and that is something that is relatable, right? I'm not sure if you guys have used anything like Skillshare, Kajabi, anything like that, but when I saw their platform, like that's exactly where my mind went, was to something like that. And so I just want to give them a shout out. I know they've been building for like a couple of months, and yeah, their platform is finally out, and for anybody who's interested, you can pick up an NFT and join their community.
Nice one. Yeah, it's one I need to. Sorry, Pete. It's one I need to look into. We talked about that actually, or I only heard from you on the last stream we done, Farid, about it, and I didn't get a chance to get into it yet. But sorry, Pete. Go ahead.
That's all good. Yeah, I heard about that project from listening in on Space with Galacticats. And I just want to give a shout out to them and all the projects that are actually building on Cardanopress. So every day I find another project just popping up going, thanks for this, Pete, and just building and integrating in their NFTs and fungible tokens into their website, giving projects governance and all sorts of things. So it's just nice to see more people being able to build on Cardano. So it's and launching something and making something really cool. So every single day there's another project popping up. So there's a lot of activity out there for sure.
Just on Cardanopress, just when you mention it, do you want to give the elevator kind of what it actually is and what it offers to projects out there in case people haven't heard about it? Because there's a lot of websites built on WordPress, and to be able to integrate blockchain into that, it's massive.
Yeah, so that it's exactly that. It's a WordPress integration to talk to the Cardano blockchain. So one of the hardest things to do is actually get that wallet connector linked into websites. And if you don't know how to code that, your JavaScript isn't very good. It's massive barrier to entry. You have to pay devs quite a lot of money to just get that done. So we thought, why not use WordPress and have some of that code all pre-done and ready to go, so you can just do a couple of clicks. Any WordPress website can have it up and running. As long as it's a self-hosted website and you do a couple of tweaks, you can get that up and running with minimal code, almost no code if you're in a particular environment, but in general, just a little bit of code and you'll be able to up and running. That can then do gated content. So we're seeing a lot of comic book artists using it to release their comic books. Essentially, mimicking what Book.io are doing with their ebook reader, but then just bringing it back onto their own platforms and giving projects ownership of that. Then we're seeing lots of projects doing governance, using their meme tokens, for example, and using it as a governance within their protocols and helping and letting their communities do some really cool things. And then we're just seeing other projects just integrating it in and just doing paywall content and whatnot. So really interesting to see what people come up with and integrating, because WordPress has so many plugins available already. You can do all these really cool and amazing things, but then just integrate that blockchain layer to it. Endless opportunities, endless amount of ideas. And we're just doing like tiny little additions here and there every day. And then people just take it away and do some crazy stuff with it.
Yeah, what I really like about what you said there, I think from a content creator's perspective, is the ability to like token gate stuff, right? To be able to share exclusive content or give people exclusive access to things based off of their NFT or something that they hold in their wallet. So a really cool use case there, when you're speaking about Cardanopress.
Yeah, it really is a great resource out there for projects, especially in a bear market where building is hard, and it can save them a lot of money if they can use that for their front end, for adding a bit extra for token holders, for even along the lines of governance and things like that. But Josh, any projects that catch your eye?
Gosh, there's only so many. I've stayed quiet about some things that I've heard about, like Project NEWM, that I know is taking some pretty serious steps to release some flagship stuff that's happening by the end of this year. And I'm really excited about what they're doing. I've been like trying to push myself in front of their attention for like the past 6 months to try and get into their ambassador team. I'm really enthusiastic about what it is that they're building. And then another thing that has some short-term stuff building up is Book.io. They're going to be releasing their token that was already from the ITO that happened last month. And this Thursday, I think it is, they've got a Twitter space with Charles Hoskinson as a guest. And that's not the kind of thing that you do and not release any big information that's going to be happening at your, with your project. There's some conspiracy theories going around with a website domain stuff.io that seems to be owned by the Book.io team, because when you search for it, it redirects you back to the Book.io website. So I don't know if that's connected, but yeah, there seems to be some stuff brewing with both of those projects that I'm really interested to see what that turns into.
Yeah, that's a team that I met some of them at the summit last year in Lausanne, and we talked about it. We'd have to set up a video and never got to it. So it's definitely one that I need to try and have on and have a chat about everything that they're doing, because like World Mobile, they're really trying to disrupt something outside of crypto. It's not like your usual DeFi protocols that only act within crypto and everything kind of cycles around. And look, they're fine, but I always like to see what's breaking that mold and what's doing something outside of that is always good. And Enoch says here about, shout out to the guys that set up Discover Cardano at the Crypto Expo in Dubai. Dan from Zengate was there. I seen Kaizen was there as well. And community led, and they won an award for best community. Really great efforts to do all of that. And why can't I think, getting brain dead at this time of the night? Person who set it all up, someone has the name for me.
Fox something. It's his Twitter handle. I can scramble to search for it.
Yeah, it's getting late at night here. I'm sorry. I'll put the link down below, because definitely a guy worth following for the effort he put into all of that and to get it out there. There was one question to finish up if we don't get anything else. From Enoch was Fantastic Four. We're going to use that going forward.
It might be taken. I think I've heard that one before somewhere.
Should the community decide where the Cardano Summit is held each year? He's not really fond of CF deciding for us. I know last year was the first one that CF done. Before that, it was IOG had done the one the year before. But I think their strategic last year was related to a lot of the team being, or a lot of CF being linked to Switzerland. And this year, bear market, there's a lot of potential funding, investors and stuff like that out in Dubai. So I think what they're doing is strategic in that line. And how would you let the community decide is the problem if the whole first half of this show, or more than the first half, was talking about voting and how Catalyst is, and letting the community decide could be a tough one there as well. But what do you guys think?
I'm intrigued. You know, like I think I'd probably agree with you, is that like there's the locations that are selected are based specifically on a certain strategy. And I know that Dubai and the Indian population is very underserved in the Cardano community, but it is very dense. And there's people there that are excited about what's happening on Cardano, but not a whole lot of people serving those communities. So yeah, I mean, I could go either way. It's an interesting proposition. I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I trust that there's some sense of benefit that we don't get to see all that clearly from it.
Yeah, I think you need to be where all the major crypto events are and where people are working in the crypto space. So Dubai's got that nice regulation there. There are a lot of companies that just have headquarters there and are working in that space. And there's crypto events constantly in Dubai. So it makes sense for me to have it there. But yeah, it's hard for a lot of the community to come on board and get over there. It's not as accessible or cheap as some other locations around the world. But I think it's really important to have reach of institutional and people with lots of money that would be interested in Cardano, because that's one of the main goals. We've got to outreach to these different communities, different projects that could potentially bring in more revenue and start building on Cardano. So that's a very good strategic goal from the foundation.
Yeah, I think that this year is definitely very strategic. I know Portugal is very popular for different ecosystems, having meetups there too. And for me, Portugal would be very easy to get to, only 2.5 hours for me to fly to Portugal. So maybe next year we could go there. But long term, when we have Voltaire up and running and proper governance, maybe that's what can be used longer term to decide where the summit could be. We'll wait and see. And thanks, Pete, for getting this. Don't know how I couldn't think of Dave. I've chatted to Dave before. Definitely a guy who deserves a lot of credit for what he done there. And I'm just going to use it's getting late here as me drawing a blank on the name. But cheers, Dave, for all you put together there. And Navjeet says that we should make these a regular. That's what I was proposing to the guys before we went live. Maybe doing a monthly show where you have your Cardano 360 towards the end of the month, maybe the start of every month. We could come on and give the highlights from that, but give more perspective from the community side. I think we're all involved in lots of different communities. I'd definitely be up for doing these more regular. If it's just hard on the time zone for Pete. Pete got the tough end on this one.
It's not that bad. And with the sun rising early every morning, it's it's fine.
Yeah, as you're coming into better weather, I suppose it's not so bad if the sun's out. But look, guys, I appreciate everyone that tuned in today. Give the video a like, share it out if you got value from it, and we will try and set these up more regular, especially during the bear market. I think it's good to get more than just one perspective into things. I know when I'm putting out my videos, as I'm sure the guys are the same, we try and give the most accurate viewpoint that we have, but it's not always going to be the exact right one. There's lots of different ways to look at it. We've went over stuff here today. I've learned lots from talking to others, so I enjoy them. Hopefully you guys too. Guys, Josh, Farid, Pete, I really appreciate your time, and everyone watching, we'll talk to you soon. And make sure you subscribe to the guys. The links are down below if you're not already subscribed.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.